I was about to walk into my lawyer's office when I heard my son whisper, "Just keep her happy until after she signs everything." His wife giggled. I froze. They were talking about me. I stayed silent, signed the papers with a smile, but what they didn't know is that I had changed one small detail that would ruin them completely. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The words, colder than the marble floor beneath my feet, slithered down the hallway. Just keep her happy until after she signs everything. His wife's giggle was the punctuation mark on my heart. I stopped, my hand tightening on the strap of my leather purse. The air in the plush corridor of Henderson and Associates seemed to thin. I recognized my son Daniel's voice, lowered but carrying that specific, wheedling tone he used when he was trying to sound reasonable about something unreasonable. Chloe's laugh was a sharp, bright sound that usually set my teeth on edge. Today, it felt like a surgical instrument. My body locked. I did not breathe. I stood perfectly still several feet from the closed door of Mr. Henderson's conference room. The hall was silent except for the low hum of the building's climate control and the distant, muffled conversation. "Relax, babe," Daniel continued, his voice clearer now as if he had turned toward the door. "It's a formality. She trusts me. She's already agreed to the principle. This just makes it all official. Clean." "Clean is good," Chloe purred. "No messy questions later. Did you see the realtor's email about the Cabo property? The view is insane. We could be there by Christmas." "I saw it, one thing at a time. Let's get her signature on the durable power of attorney and the updated trust documents first. Then the accounts. Then we talk vacations." I heard the rustle of clothing, the clink of a bracelet. "Just make sure she signs in all the right places. The last thing we need is a technicality from old man Henderson." "Don't worry about Henderson. He works for her and she does what I suggest. Always has." A numbness spread from my core outward, coating my limbs. I had known this meeting was about consolidating some of my affairs. Daniel had framed it as a practical step. "You're getting older, Mom, not old," he'd said with that charming smile, "but let's make things easier. If something happens, I can handle the bills without court nonsense. It's just protection." I had believed him. I had wanted to believe him. The door to the conference room opened suddenly, and Mr. Henderson emerged, his kind, wrinkled face breaking into a polite smile. "Evelyn, there you are. We were just wondering if you'd gotten lost." His eyes, sharp behind his spectacles, scanned my face. I wondered what he saw. I forced a smile onto my own face. It felt like cracking plaster. "No, just admiring the art," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I gestured vaguely at a generic landscape painting on the wall. He held the door open for me. I walked forward, each step a conscious effort. The room was dominated by a long, polished table. Daniel and Chloe sat on one side. Daniel stood immediately, his expression all concern and warmth. "Mom, you okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said. The term of endearment tasted like ash. "Just a long drive." Chloe remained seated, offering a tight, glossy smile. "Hi, Evelyn. Doesn't this place just scream important documents?" She waved a manicured hand at the room. "It does indeed," I said, taking the seat opposite them, next to Mr. Henderson's place at the head. The documents were laid out before me in neat, labeled stacks. I saw the headers: Durable Power of Attorney, Amendment to Revocable Living Trust, Designation of Financial Agent. The words blurred for a second. Mr. Henderson took his seat, his demeanor turning professional. "Evelyn, as we discussed on the phone, Daniel felt it prudent to update several of your estate planning instruments. The goal is to streamline the management of your assets should you become incapacitated and to ensure a smooth transition of management responsibilities. Daniel has been named as your primary agent in these documents." I nodded slowly, looking at the papers. "I see." Daniel leaned forward. "It's just a safety net, Mom, like we talked about. I'd be able to pay your mortgage, manage your investments, all that stuff, so you wouldn't have to worry." "So I wouldn't have to worry," I repeated, my voice flat. "Exactly," he said, too enthusiastically. Chloe nudged him under the table and he dialed it back. "It's just a responsible thing to do." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. My duty is to ensure you understand what you're signing, Evelyn. These documents grant broad powers. They allow your agent, Daniel, to act on your behalf in all financial matters. He can access bank accounts, sell property, make investments. It is effective immediately upon your signature, unless you become incapacitated, at which point it continues uninterrupted. I looked from Henderson's serious face to Daniel's eager one. I thought of the whisper in the hall. Just keep her happy until after she signs everything. I thought of the Cabo property view. I thought of the last loan for his condo down payment, the investment in his friend's startup that never materialized, the constant, gentle pressure about how much easier life would be if things were consolidated. A strange calm descended on me. It was not peace. It was the absolute stillness that comes when a decision is made and there is no turning back. The pain was there, a vast, hollow ache in my chest, but it was contained, locked away behind a clear sheet of glass. I could see it, but it could not touch my hands, which were now steady. "Do you have any questions?" Mr. Henderson asked, his eyes holding mine. I saw a flicker there, a question of his own. He had been my and Arthur's lawyer for 30 years. He knew me. He knew the woman who read every line of every contract, who asked about interest rates and fee schedules. He was waiting for that woman to appear. I looked down at the power of attorney document. My eyes found the notary section, blank and waiting. I thought of my signature. The one I had practiced as a girl, the one I used on mortgage papers, on my marriage certificate, on report cards when Daniel was a child. It was a part of me, and they were asking me to use it to hand myself over. "No," I said, my voice clear in the quiet room. "No questions. Daniel has explained it all. It seems very sensible." Daniel's exhale was audible. Chloe's posture relaxed a fraction. "If you're certain," Henderson said slowly. He picked up a pen from the table and offered it to me. It was a heavy silver pen, cold in my hand. "Where do I sign?" I asked. He guided me, pointing to flagged lines and initials boxes. The process was methodical. Sign here, initial here, date here. My hand moved across the paper, leaving behind the familiar loops and lines of Evelyn Rouse. Each stroke felt like a betrayal of myself, but also a declaration of a new, private war. I signed with the same deliberate care I used when balancing my checkbook. I did not rush. I did not tremble. When the last signature was done, I placed the pen on the table with a soft click. The sound was final. "Excellent," Daniel said, standing again, coming around the table to squeeze my shoulder. "See, painless. You want to get an early dinner to celebrate, our treat." "No, thank you," I said, gathering my purse. My movements were precise. "I have a headache coming on. I think I'll just go home and rest." Of course," he said, his relief making him magnanimous. "You do that. We'll take care of everything from here." Chloe stood, gathering her expensive coat. "Feel better, Evelyn. We'll call you tomorrow." Mr. Henderson was quietly stacking the executed documents. He looked up at me. "I'll have certified copies sent to you, Evelyn, for your records." "Thank you, Benjamin," I said, using his first name deliberately. A small anchor to reality. "I'll look forward to receiving them." I walked out of the conference room, down the same marble hallway. I did not look back. I could feel their eyes on me, but I knew they were not seeing me. They were seeing a task completed, an obstacle removed. They were seeing the key to a lock, now in their hands. The elevator ride down was silent. The lobby was bustling with people ending their workday. I walked out into the late afternoon light, the city noise a dull roar. I unlocked my car, a sensible sedan I had owned for 10 years, and sat inside. I placed my hands on the steering wheel. I looked at them. The same hands that had rocked my son to sleep, that had held my husband's as he passed, that had planted roses in my garden, that had just signed away my autonomy. Then I started the engine. The mechanical sound was a comfort. I pulled into traffic, driving not with the dazed confusion of a victim, but with the focused intent of a strategist who has just allowed the enemy to believe they have won the first, crucial battle. The pain was still there, the hollowness. But it was now filled with a new substance, a cold, hard, and absolutely silent resolve. They wanted everything. Let them think they had it. The real work was just beginning. The drive home was a study in silence. I did not turn on the radio. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional tap of the turn signal. My mind was not racing. It was methodically assembling a ledger. Each memory, each recent conversation with Daniel was being retrieved and placed in a new column under a new heading, evidence. My house welcomed me with its familiar stillness. It was a modest, 2-story brick colonial Arthur, and I bought when Daniel was 5. The mortgage was paid off 12 years ago. Every room held a piece of our history, a fact that now felt threatening instead of comforting. I locked the front door behind me, the click of the deadbolt a satisfying, definitive sound. I removed my coat and hung it in the closet, aligning the shoulders precisely on the hanger. I went directly to the small, oak-paneled study. This had been Arthur's domain, and after he passed, it became mine, a place for quiet tasks. I sat at the desk, a solid piece of furniture we had saved for. I did not allow myself to feel. I had a job to do. The first ledger was literal. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a gray, 2-inch thick filing accordion. It contained our household financial records for the last 20 years. I set it on the desk. Then I turned to the bookshelf and took down a large, leather-bound photo album, its edges worn soft. I placed it next to the files. I started with the numbers. I opened the file to the section marked Daniel Adult. Here, I kept a record of every financial transaction between us since he graduated college. I am, by nature and profession, an organizer. I had notes. There was the check for $15,000 for his security deposit and last month's rent on his first apartment in the city. A loan, he said. I noted the word loan in my register, but I had never expected repayment. I was investing in his start. There was the $8,000 for a reliable car after his old one died. He was between jobs. A gift, he called it. Then the larger sums began. 2 years ago, a request for $25,000 as an investment in his friend Marcus's tech startup. He was so excited, so sure. "It's a ground floor opportunity, Mom. This is how wealth is built." I wrote the check. The startup, Signer Gen, ceased operations 8 months later. No return, not even a tax write-off document. The most substantial entry was from 11 months ago, $75,000, a contribution toward the down payment on his and Chloe's condo. "The market is crazy, Mom. If we don't get in now, we'll be priced out forever. It's an investment in brick and mortar, solid." He presented it as a joint venture, my money securing their future. I had asked fewer questions that time. I was tired. He was my son. I wanted him to be happy, stable. I transferred the funds. I tallied the figures in the margin of the last statement. A precise, columned sum. It was a significant amount. It represented years of my careful saving, of Arthur's insurance money, of my pension's steady drip. It was not, however, the totality of my assets, not even half. They were after the rest. The house, the remaining investments, the quiet security I had spent a lifetime building. I closed the financial file. The numbers were clear. They told a story of gradual escalation, of testing boundaries that kept moving. I opened the photo album. The first page held a picture of Arthur holding a newborn Daniel, his face a mixture of terror and awe. My husband was a practical man, an electrical engineer. He believed in planning, in safety nets. He left me comfortably provided for, with explicit instructions to be wise. I turned the pages. Daniel as a toddler, chasing a butterfly in this very backyard. Daniel at 8, missing a front tooth, holding a spelling bee trophy. Daniel at 16, looking awkward and handsome in his first suit for homecoming. I had sewn the hem of his trousers that night. The photographs were a different ledger. Column A, the invested love, the time, the Band-Aids, the bedtime stories, the college applications filled out together at this very desk. Column B, the recent years, fewer photos. The ones that existed were mostly from holidays, with Chloe always positioned centrally, her smile bright and demanding. Daniel's face in these was different. The softness of his boyhood was gone, replaced by a polished, sharper version. His eyes in the photos, I saw now, often looked past the camera toward something else. The final piece of the ledger was Arthur's will. I unlocked the small fireproof box on the shelf. The document was simple. Everything to me. A paragraph stated, "It is my wish that our son Daniel be raised with the values of hard work and integrity, and that he shall inherit from Evelyn as she sees fit. guided by those same principles. Arthur believed in my judgment. He trusted me to be fair, but also to be smart. I sat back in the chair. The twilight deepened in the room, turning the walls a soft blue. I did not turn on a lamp. The contrast between the two ledgers was the story of my betrayal. The photo album and the will spoke of a covenant, a family built on mutual support and earned legacy. The financial file and the memory of today's whispered conversations spoke of a transaction, a withdrawal, a liquidation. They saw my life as a finished book, its value only in the assets that could be sold. The love, the history, the quiet days in this house, those were irrelevant sentimentalities. To them, I was not a person with a past and a present. I was an instrument to fund a future. Their future. One with Cabo views and no messy questions. A specific memory surfaced, unbidden. Daniel, age 10, had wanted an expensive mountain bike. We told him we would pay for half if he saved his allowance and lawn mowing money for the other half. It took him 7 months. The day he had finally counted out his share in crumpled bills and coins on this desk, his pride was a tangible thing. Arthur had clapped him on the shoulder. "Remember this feeling, son. What you earn yourself tastes sweeter." What had happened to that boy? Where had that lesson gone? Chloe's influence was part of it, yes. Her appetite was obvious, but Daniel had chosen her. He had chosen to embrace her values, to see my careful life as something to be mined. He had made himself the tool for that mining. The hollow ache from the law firm was still there, but it was now filled with a new material, cold comprehension. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, long-term strategy. My kindness had been my vulnerability. My trust had been the loophole they sought to exploit. I closed the photo album. I returned the financial file and the will to their places. The room was dark now. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my backyard. The outline of my rose bushes was just visible. I had pruned them back hard last fall, and they were now pushing out new, green growth. A plan was not yet formed, but a principle was. I would not be liquidated. I would not let Arthur's legacy, or my own, be converted into a down payment for a Cabo view. The documents I signed today granted power. But power, I understood as a former librarian, depends entirely on the specific words that confer it. Words can be changed. Clauses can be altered. Signatures can be rendered ineffective by earlier, more prudent signatures. I had signed their papers. That move was complete. My next move required information. It required the one man who knew the weight of words as well as I did, Benjamin Henderson. But I could not go to him as a wounded mother. I had to go as a client, with a clear, strategic question. I turned from the window and turned on the desk lamp. The pool of light was sharp and focused on the empty blotter. I took out a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. I wrote a single line at the top. Questions for BH. I would need to be careful. I would need to be precise. The ledger of love was closed. A new ledger was now open. The sheet of paper with questions for BH remained on my desk for 2 days. I did not rush. Impulse was their strategy, not mine. I needed to approach Benjamin Henderson with a rationale he would accept from the Evelyn he knew, cautious, thorough, slightly skeptical of legal formalities. Grief-stricken and betrayed would not serve my purpose. On the 3rd morning, I called his office. His assistant, Marion, recognized my voice immediately. "Evelyn, how are you?" "I'm well, thank you, Marion. Is Benjamin available for a brief consultation later this week? I have a few questions about the documents I signed recently, just for my own records." "Of course, let me check." I heard the soft click of a keyboard. "He has an opening tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Will that work?" "It will, thank you." The following afternoon, rain streaked the windows of Henderson's private office, blurring the view of the city. The room was as I remembered. Shelves of dense legal volumes, a large mahogany desk, 2 comfortable client chairs. It smelled of old paper and lemon wood polish. Benjamin rose as I entered, gesturing to a seat. "Evelyn, Marion said you had some follow-up questions. Perfectly normal. Always good to be certain." He settled back into his high-backed leather chair, his hands steepled on the desk blotter. "I appreciate you seeing me on short notice," I began, placing my hands flat on my knees to keep them still. I've been reviewing my copies of the Durable Power of Attorney and the Trust Amendment. I want to make sure I understand the mechanics. Of course, ask anything. I had rehearsed this. The power of attorney. It's effective immediately upon my signature, correct? Yes, it's a durable power, meaning it remains in effect if you become incapacitated. But it is active now. Daniel could, theoretically, act on your behalf this afternoon if you instructed him to. I see, I paused, as if considering a complex idea. And the amendment to the Living Trust. It names Daniel as successor trustee and primary beneficiary upon my passing. Correct. It streamlines the transfer, avoids probate. Your assets within the trust would pass directly to him. I nodded slowly. Benjamin, this may sound like a peculiar question, but in my work as a librarian, I learned the importance of precise language. What if I changed my mind? He leaned forward slightly. About the appointments. About the beneficiary designation. Specifically, if I wanted to change who inherits the trust assets, is that something I can still do? A flicker of something, concern, understanding passed behind his glasses. He answered carefully. The trust is revocable. You are the grantor and the current trustee. You retain the right to amend it at any time for any reason, as long as you are mentally competent. The document you signed with Daniel present was an amendment. You could sign another one tomorrow with different instructions, and it would supersede the previous. The rain tapped steadily against the glass. This was the first crucial piece. And such an amendment, I continued, my voice level, it would only require my signature, not the signature of the previously named successor. Only yours, and it would need to be notarized, of course, but Daniel's consent or signature is not required. It is your trust. I let a moment of silence pass, watching the water slide down the window pane. What about the power of attorney? If I had second thoughts about the agent I appointed, could I revoke it? You can. You would execute a revocation of power of attorney form and provide a copy to any financial institutions where the original was filed. It's straightforward. Again, the consent of the former agent is not needed. I looked at him directly. So, legally, the documents I signed last week do not lock me into anything irrevocable. I retain full control and the ability to change direction. He held my gaze. That is an accurate summary of the law, yes. The documents grant powers, but you, as the principal, remain the source of those powers. You can rescind them. He paused, choosing his words. Evelyn, is there a particular concern, something that has prompted these questions? This was the delicate part. I could not tell him what I heard. He was my lawyer, but he was also an officer of the court. If I revealed a scheme of financial exploitation, his ethical duties might compel him to act in ways that could disrupt my own plan. I needed his legal guidance, not his intervention. No specific concern, I said, offering a small, tight smile. Just an old woman's need for thorough understanding. Arthur always said to read the fine print. I suppose I'm just reading it after the fact. He nodded, though his expression told me he was not entirely convinced. A wise practice. Is there anything else? Yes, one last hypothetical. I folded my hands in my lap. Suppose I wanted to amend the trust, but not to name a different person. Suppose I wanted to redirect the assets to an institution, a charity, a community foundation, something that could not be revoked or changed by a beneficiary after my death. Is there a way to do that, to make it permanent? Benjamin Henderson sat very still. He understood now. The questions were no longer general. They were specific, targeted. He was silent for a long 10 seconds, studying me. I did not look away. There is, he said finally, his voice lower. You could amend the trust to designate the assets upon your death to flow into an irrevocable philanthropic trust. The terms of that secondary trust would be fixed at its creation. You could name yourself as the lifetime income beneficiary, so you retain use of the assets for your life. But upon your passing, the corpus would go to the charitable entity you name, the successor beneficiary. That designation could not be altered by anyone, including Daniel, if he were no longer the successor trustee. The room seemed to grow quieter, the sound of the rain fading. This was it, the mechanism. How would I do that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You would execute a new amendment to your revocable trust. The language would direct the trustee, currently you, then your successor, upon your death, to fund the irrevocable charitable trust. The charitable trust document would be created simultaneously. It is a two-step process, but legally sound. Could it be done discreetly? It is a private document until it is funded. No one needs to know its contents but you, me, and the eventual trustee of the charitable trust. I reached into my purse and retrieved the notepad I had brought. I opened it to a blank page. I took the pen from his desk blotter. It was the same heavy, silver pen I had used days before. The click as I extended the writing tip was sharp and clear in the quiet room. Benjamin, I said, looking up at him, I would like you to draft those documents for me, the amendment to my revocable trust, and the declaration of irrevocable philanthropic trust. I have a beneficiary in mind. He did not ask if I was sure. He did not ask about Daniel. He saw the determination in my face, the same resolve he had seen in Arthur's when they drew up their first business contract 40 years ago. He gave a single, professional nod. Of course. Do you have the name of the charitable organization? I wrote it down on the notepad. The Arthur Rousseau Memorial Community Garden Fund. I pushed the pad toward him. The details can be worked out, but the successor beneficiary on the philanthropic trust must be this fund. No other individuals. The language must be absolute. He read the name and his lips pressed into a thin line. He understood the tribute and the rebuke it contained. I will draft them. It will take a few days. I will call you when they are ready for your signature. Thank you. I stood up. The meeting concluded. The plan was no longer a nebulous intention. It was now a set of instructions in a lawyer's mind, soon to be text on official paper. He stood as well. Evelyn, he said as I turned to leave, this path, it is a final one. Once the philanthropic trust is created and funded, it cannot be undone. Not by you, not by anyone. I met his eyes. I am counting on that, Benjamin. Some things should be permanent. I walked out of his office, the weight of the silver pen's click still hanging in the air. The weapon would not be a shout or a scene. It would be a clause, a single, precisely worded clause. The documents were drafted, but not yet signed. Benjamin Henderson needed time to prepare the precise language for the philanthropic trust. In that interval, my role was to maintain the facade. I understood that the success of my plan depended entirely on their continued belief in my compliance. Any change in my behavior would be a warning. 2 days after my meeting with Benjamin, Daniel called. His voice was bright, suffused with a casual warmth that now sounded like a rehearsed script. Mom, how are you holding up? Everything settled after the big meeting? I'm fine, Daniel. Yes, everything seems settled. I kept my tone light, pleasantly vacant. Good, good. Listen, Chloe and I were thinking we haven't just visited, for no reason in ages. How about we come by Saturday for lunch? Just the three of us. We'll bring dessert. The invitation was part of the performance, the dutiful son checking in. I could imagine Chloe in the background, nodding her approval. They wanted to observe me, to confirm my continued docility. That sounds lovely, I said. I'll make that chicken salad you like. Perfect. See you around noon. Saturday morning, I moved through my kitchen with deliberate focus. I prepared the chicken salad, dicing the celery and grapes evenly, mixing the mayonnaise and lemon juice in the exact proportions I had used for 30 years. I set the table in the breakfast nook with my everyday stoneware and cloth napkins. The sun streamed in through the window over the sink, highlighting the dust motes in the air. I did not see poetry in them. I saw particles waiting to settle. At precisely 12 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer it. Daniel stood on the porch, a bakery box in his hands. Chloe was beside him, wearing a cashmere sweater despite the mild weather. Their smiles were wide and identical. Mom, Daniel leaned in to kiss my cheek. He smelled of expensive cologne. Evelyn, you look well, Chloe said, her eyes doing a quick, appraising sweep of me, then of the entryway behind me. She handed me a bottle of white wine, chilled. A little something for lunch. Thank you both. Come in. They followed me to the kitchen, filling the quiet house with their presence. Daniel placed the bakery box on the counter. Lemon tart from that new place downtown. Insane. It looks wonderful, I said, gesturing to the table. Please sit. We settled into the nook. I served the chicken salad on plates with a side of simple green salad. For a few minutes, the conversation was mundane. The weather, traffic, a new restaurant they had tried. Then Daniel took a sip of water and leaned back, adopting a casual posture. So, Mom, now that all the paperwork is sorted, you must be feeling a real sense of relief. I took a small bite of my food, chewing slowly before answering. I suppose I am. One less thing to think about. Exactly, Chloe chimed in, her voice sweet. It's so important to have things in order, for everyone's peace of mind. Of course, I said. Daniel's eyes were on me, watching for a reaction. It really opens up possibilities, for us to help you more proactively. We were looking at some brochures for this amazing senior living community over in Crestview. Not that you need to move now, he added quickly, but it's good to plan. They have concierge medicine activities, the works. You'd love it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. They were already planning to move me out, to free up the house. I kept my expression politely interested. Crestview, that's quite a distance from my garden. Chloe waved a hand dismissively. Oh, they have fantastic communal gardens. You wouldn't have to do any of the weeding. It's all maintained for you. It's really about maximizing your quality of life and minimizing your burdens. My garden isn't a burden, I said, my voice mild. It's a pleasure. But the upkeep of this whole house must be a lot, Daniel pressed, his tone gentle, reasonable. The roof, the yard, the taxes, we just want you to be comfortable and not worrying about repairs. If you were in a modern, maintenance-free place, I could even manage the sale of this house for you. Get you top dollar. It would be a huge boost to your security. The subtext was clear. The house was an asset to be liquidated. My attachment to it was a sentimental obstacle to their efficiency. I'll certainly think about it, I said, offering a vague smile. It's kind of you to be so concerned. Daniel seemed satisfied with this non-committal answer. He shifted tactics. And on our end, it's going to let us breathe a little easier too. Make some bigger moves. I'm looking at a couple of major career opportunities. Consulting gigs that require some upfront capital for travel and networking. And the condo, we're thinking of upgrading to a unit with a terrace. An investment in our lifestyle, It pays dividends in well-being. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. The market is so hot. If we don't climb the property ladder now, we'll get left behind. It's all about strategic positioning. They were laying out their timeline, their expectations. The upfront capital and the terrace were not future dreams. They were imminent plans, budgeted with my assets. I'm sure you'll make wise decisions, I said, pouring more iced tea into my glass. The condensation wet my fingers. We will, Daniel said, confidence radiating from him. With everything now structured properly, we can really start building the future, for all of us. The phrase "for all of us" hung in the sunlit air, a blatant untruth. There was no us in their spreadsheets. There was a column for resources and a column for expenditures. I was now firmly in the resource column. I played my part. I asked superficial questions about the consulting field. I admired Chloe's bracelet. I served the lemon tart, which was, as promised, very good. I laughed at a mild joke. I was the picture of a contented, slightly oblivious mother, reassured by her son's take-charge attitude. When they left 2 hours later, with more cheek kisses and promises to call soon, I closed the door and locked it. I leaned against the solid wood for a moment, listening to the sound of their car engine fatting down the street. I returned to the kitchen. I cleared the table, scraping the leftover tart into the disposal. I washed the plates and glasses by hand, the warm water and soap a repetitive, calming ritual. I wiped down the table, erasing the faint water rings from our glasses. My performance had been adequate. I had given them nothing to suspect. I had nodded and smiled while they described the dismantling of my life. Their confidence was now complete. They believed the gate was open and the path clear. As I put the last plate in the cupboard, I looked at the clock. Benjamin Henderson would have the documents ready soon. The thought was not a thrill, but a point of factual anticipation. Their performance today had been a series of hints and plans. Mine would be a single, decisive action. A signature again, but this one would not grant power. It would redirect it. Permanently. The chicken salad container went into the refrigerator. I would eat the leftovers for the next few days. There was no sense in waste. The invitation arrived via text 3 days later, a group message from Daniel to Chloe and me. "Mom, we're having a few friends over Friday night to celebrate some good news. Casual. 7 p.m. Hope you can make it." Attached was a photo of their building's sleek lobby. The good news was not specified. It did not need to be. I confirmed my attendance. My absence would have been noted, questioned. I needed to see this next act of their performance. Friday evening, I dressed in a simple navy pantsuit, something appropriate but unremarkable. I drove to their building, a new glass and steel tower in a part of the city Arthur and I had rarely visited. The parking garage was underground, cool and echoing. The elevator to the 18th floor was silent and fast, making my ears pop. Daniel answered the door. He wore a crisp, open-collared shirt and designer jeans. "Mom, you made it. Come in, come in." He ushered me into a space that felt more like a hotel suite than a home. The walls were a stark white. The furniture was low-slung and angular in shades of gray. A large abstract painting, all slashes of red and black, dominated one wall. The air smelled of citrus cleaner and something floral, likely from the massive orchid arrangement on the glass coffee table. Music played at a low volume, something electronic and wordless. About a dozen people were already there, holding wine glasses. They were all around Daniel and Chloe's age, dressed in the same uniform of casual expense. Chloe detached herself from a group and floated over, air-kissing near my cheek. "Evelyn, so glad you're here. Let me get you a drink. Sauvignon Blanc." "Just sparkling water, thank you." She gave a little pout but turned to fetch it. I took the opportunity to observe. The condo was spacious, with a terrace visible through sliding glass doors. It was furnished for show, not comfort. There were no books, no photographs of family, no evidence of hobbies or history. It was a stage set. Chloe returned with my water in a heavy crystal glass. "Isn't the view insane? Just wait until we get the corner unit with the wraparound terrace. This will feel like a closet." She said it loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. A woman in a silk camisole nodded in agreement. "I'm sure it will be lovely," I said. Daniel clinked a fork against his glass. "Everyone, a quick toast." The chatter subsided. He put an arm around Chloe. "We just wanted to gather some of our favorite people to celebrate turning a corner, getting some family business squared away and looking ahead to an incredible new chapter. To the future." "To the future," the group echoed, raising their glasses. Their smiles were bright and vacant. I lifted my water, taking a small sip. The party resumed. I found a quiet spot near a bookshelf that held decorative ceramic spheres and a few coffee table books about architecture. I listened. A man with a meticulously trimmed beard was talking to Daniel. "So, with the liquidity event, you thinking of diving into the market? Crypto's poised for another run." Daniel shook his head, a knowing smile on his face. "More traditional, real estate, maybe a small rental property, something that generates cash flow. But first, the upgrade here. Got to invest in your primary asset, right?" "Absolutely. Location, location, location." Nearby, Chloe was holding court with 2 other women. "The best part is the peace of mind," she was saying, her voice carrying. "Knowing everything is managed, that you're not a burden. It's the ultimate gift a parent can give, really. Freedom for everyone." One of the women nodded. "My parents are such hoarders. They have this huge house full of junk. The thought of dealing with it all gives me anxiety." "See," Chloe said, sipping her wine. "That's what we've avoided. Clean, modern transitions. It's about respect in a way." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My life, my home with its cherished junk, was being discussed as a problem they had neatly solved. Their celebration was a victory lap for a conquest they believed was complete. A young woman, perhaps a colleague of Daniel's, approached me. "You must be Daniel's mom. He talks about you so much. It's so great you're being so supportive of their plans." I offered a small smile. Family is important. It really is. And it's smart, getting everything in order early. My boyfriend and I are trying to get his mom to downsize, but she's so sentimental about her garden. "A garden is a lot of work," I said, my tone neutral. "Exactly. That's what I say. Time to enjoy yourself, right?" I did not answer. I excused myself and walked toward the sliding doors, stepping out onto the existing terrace. The night air was cooler. The city lights spread out in a grid below. It was an impressive view, but it felt disconnected, like watching a movie of a city. Daniel joined me a moment later, holding a bottle of craft beer. "Pretty amazing, huh?" "It's very panoramic," I said. He leaned on the railing. "This is just the beginning, Mom. Once we're in the corner unit, this will be the entertainment space. Built-in grill, fire pit, the works. Chloe's already picking out furniture." "It sounds like a large project." "Worth it. You create the life you want, right? No point in waiting." He took a long drink. "You're okay, though. Not too much noise inside." "I'm fine. Your friends seem nice." "They're a good crowd. Winners, you know. People who get things done." He looked out at the lights, his expression one of satisfied possession. He saw the future laid out before him, a future purchased, he believed, with the currency of my trust. I saw it too, but in a different aspect. I saw the precarity of it, the expensive lease on this apartment, the planned upgrade, the talk of rental properties and liquidity. It was a house of cards built on the assumption of a steady, substantial windfall. My windfall. "Well," I said, turning from the view, "don't let me keep you from your guests. I should be heading home soon. It's a bit of a drive." "Of course. Thanks for coming, Mom. It meant a lot." He hugged me, a brief, confident squeeze. I collected my purse and said my goodbyes. Chloe was by the door. "Drive safe, Evelyn. We'll call you next week. Maybe we can look at those Crestview brochures together." "Perhaps," I said. The elevator descended. In the sterile silence, I replayed the snippets of conversation. Liquidity event, clean transitions, not a burden, the ultimate gift. Their words were not just boasts, they were a blueprint of their intentions. They had already spent the money in their minds. They were measuring for furniture. Driving home, the quiet of my car was a relief. The glow of their party, the laughter, the confident plans, it all faded into the background hum of the city. They were celebrating a future they had stolen. They believed the signature was the final act. But I had not yet signed the document that mattered. Benjamin Henderson had called that afternoon. The papers were ready. The irrevocable philanthropic trust, waiting for my signature and a notary's seal. Their celebration was premature. They were toasting a victory that existed only in the clause they had overlooked, the one I was about to enact. The party was not an end. It was merely intermission, and they did not know the second act was mine. The silence after the party was more profound than before. In the days that followed, the reality of what I was about to do settled into the spaces of my house like a change in barometric pressure. The documents from Benjamin Henderson were ready. All that was required was my signature, again in his office, with a notary. It was a simple, administrative act, yet it felt heavier than the first. I scheduled the appointment for a Tuesday morning. The night before, I did not sleep well. I lay in the dark, not wrestling with doubt, but with a form of grief. I was mourning the son I thought I had. The finality of my legal action would cement a new reality, my son as an adversary. There was a part of me, the mother part, that whispered this was too harsh, that perhaps there was still a path back. But then I would hear Chloe's giggle in the hallway, see Daniel's satisfied face on the terrace, and the whisper would cease. On Tuesday, I dressed with the same care as for the first signing. This time, there was no pretense of a family meeting. I met Benjamin in his office alone. The documents were on his desk, 2 separate stacks. "The first," he explained, his voice a low, steady rumble, "is the amendment to your revocable living trust. It revokes the previous amendment that named Daniel as successor trustee and beneficiary. In its place, It instructs that upon your death, the assets held in the trust shall be used to fund the second document. He tapped the other stack. This is the declaration of the Arthur Rousseau Memorial Community Garden Fund, an irrevocable philanthropic trust. You are named as the lifetime income beneficiary. Upon your passing, the principal transfers permanently to the fund, to be used for the maintenance and expansion of the community garden on Elm Street, per the bylaws enclosed. The board of the Garden Foundation will serve as trustees of this fund. He paused, letting me absorb the mechanics. Once you sign this, Evelyn, the direction is set. You can alter the first document, the revocable trust, again in the future if you wish. But the philanthropic trust, once created and funded, is immutable. Its beneficiary cannot be changed. Not by you, not by anyone. I understood. I was creating a legal vessel for my legacy that was immune to manipulation. And the power of attorney I granted Daniel. We can execute the revocation today as well. I have the form here. It requires a notary, same as the trusts. Then let's do it all, I said. The notary, a serious young woman, was summoned. The process was quiet, methodical. I signed where Benjamin indicated, initialed, dated. The pen moved across the paper. This signature did not feel like a betrayal. It felt like the construction of a wall, a necessary protective barrier. I signed the revocation of power of attorney last. The final stroke of the pen felt decisive. When it was done, the notary stamped and signed, then left. Benjamin gathered the executed documents. I will file these with the county recorder and provide certified copies to you and the Garden Foundation. The change is now effective. I thanked him and left. The deed was accomplished. The trap, if one could call it that, was now legally baited and set. They would not discover it until they tried to spring it. Instead of going home, I drove across town to Elm Street. The community garden was a 2-acre plot nestled between old row houses and a small park. Arthur had volunteered here on weekends. After he died, I kept up a small plot, more for the connection than for the produce. I parked and walked in through the chain-link gate. The garden was in late spring flush. Rows of lettuce and spinach were bright green. Tomato plants were staked and budding. The air smelled of damp soil and rosemary. I went to my plot, a 4-by-8-foot rectangle. I had planted carrots and bush beans. The soil was dry. I found a watering can by the communal shed and filled it at the spigot. I watered my plot slowly, the water darkening the rich earth. The physical act was calming. I knelt, not caring about the dirt on my knees, and began to weed. I pulled out tiny, invasive grasses, feeling their roots give way. The work required focus, but no complex thought. It was a rhythm. An older man, Martin, who managed the compost bins, ambled over. "Afternoon, Evelyn. Haven't seen you in a week or two." "I've been busy with some family matters," I said, sitting back on my heels. "Always something," he said, nodding. "Your beans are coming in nice." "They are." I looked at the orderly rows, the product of simple rules. Plant, water, weed, wait. "Martin, if the garden ever came into some money, a proper endowment, what would you do with it?" He scratched his chin, thinking. "Oh, practical things. Fix the fence properly. Install a proper irrigation system so the old folks don't have to haul cans. Maybe hire a part-time coordinator to run kids' programs. It's not sexy, but it's what keeps a place like this alive." He looked at me. "Why, you playing the lottery?" "Just thinking," I said. "It's a good place. It deserves to last." "That it does," he agreed, and moved on to turn the compost. I finished weeding and stood, brushing the soil from my hands. I walked along the gravel paths, past plots tended by people from all walks of life. This was a different kind of legacy than a condo with a terrace. It was messy, slow, collective. It required patience and shared effort. It grew things you could actually eat. The doubt that had haunted me the night before dissolved here, replaced by a solid certainty. My action was not vengeance. It was conservation. I was not tearing something down. I was ensuring that what Arthur and I had built, not just in wealth but in values, would be transferred to something that grew, that fed, that endured. The garden was a system of nurture, not extraction. Daniel and Chloe's vision of the future was a closed loop, ending with them. This garden's future was an open cycle, renewing itself season after season, benefiting people I knew and people I would never meet. I locked the garden gate behind me. As I drove home, the weight was different. It was no longer the pressure of indecision, but the firm burden of a choice made. The waiting period had begun. They would make their move, confident and entitled. And when they did, they would find the ground beneath their plans had been quietly, legally, and irrevocably shifted. My part was done. Now I simply had to tend my own garden and wait for the season to turn. The waiting period lasted 8 days. I occupied myself with routine. I pruned the roses. I organized my spice cabinet alphabetically. I went to the garden twice, watering, weeding, speaking with Martin about irrigation systems. Life proceeded on its surface with a placid normality. Beneath that surface, I knew the mechanism I had set in motion was active. The revocation of the power of attorney would have been filed. The new trust documents would be recorded. It was a matter of time before they tried to use the keys they thought they had and found the locks changed. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the living room, reshelving some books that had gotten out of order. The phone rang, and Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I took a slow breath, settled into my armchair, and answered. "Hello, Daniel." "Mom," his voice was tight, a single syllable stretched thin. "Are you at home?" "I am. Is everything all right? You sound strange." I don't know," he exhaled sharply. "I'm at the bank. I was trying to initiate a transfer for the down payment on the corner unit. We got the offer accepted. It's time sensitive." I said nothing, letting him fill the silence. "The manager here is saying there's an issue with my authority. On your investment account, the one we set up the POA for." His words were coming faster, tinged with confusion and a rising edge of panic. "He says the documentation on file shows a revocation was recorded last week, that the power of attorney is no longer valid." "A revocation?" I kept my tone light, puzzled. "That doesn't sound right. Are they looking at the correct papers?" "Yes, they're looking at the correct papers." The volume of his voice increased. I could imagine him turning away from the bank manager, speaking into the phone through clenched teeth. "Mom, did you do something? Did you go back to Henderson?" "Go back for what? We signed everything we needed to sign." I infused my voice with a touch of maternal concern. "Maybe it's a computer error. Banks make mistakes all the time." "This isn't a mistake." He showed me the filing. "A revocation of durable power of attorney executed by you and notarized last Tuesday." His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Why would you do that? We talked about this. This was the whole point." "Daniel, I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't signed anything new. You were with me for all the important papers." I let a note of gentle reproach enter my voice. "Perhaps Mr. Henderson filed something in error. You know he's getting older. You should call his office and straighten it out." There was a long pause. I heard muffled voices, then the sound of him walking, a door closing. He was in a private room now. "Mom, listen to me. This is serious. We have a signed purchase agreement. The deposit is due. This transfer needs to happen today. If it doesn't, we lose the condo and our earnest money, $10,000, gone." "Oh my," I made the sound of a distressed sigh. "That's terrible, but surely this is just a mix-up. Mr. Henderson will fix it. Have you called him?" "Not yet. I called you first." His tone was accusatory. "Well, you should call him right away. He's your lawyer too, in a way, since he handles the family matters. He'll know what to do." Another silence. I could almost hear his mind racing, trying to reconcile my calm, confused demeanor with the legal reality the bank manager had just presented. He wanted to blame me, but my performance was flawless. The dotty, unaware mother. I had given him that role to play for me. Now I was playing one for him. "Okay," he said finally, the fight momentarily gone from his voice, replaced by a bewildered frustration. "Okay, I'll call Henderson. This has to be a mistake. It has to be." "I'm sure it is, sweetheart." The endearment was cold on my tongue. "Let me know what he says. I'll be right here." "Yeah, I'll call you back." He hung up. I placed my phone on the side table. The living room was quiet. A beam of afternoon sun cut across the rug, illuminating specks of dust in the air. I watched them drift. The first tremor had hit. His confusion was genuine. The revocation was a concrete, undeniable fact that disrupted his immediate plan. He was still in the phase of believing it was an error, a clerical glitch. He would call Benjamin Henderson. Henderson, per our discreet agreement, would be professionally vague. He would confirm the revocation was properly filed. He would likely suggest Daniel come into the office to discuss the situation. He would not, of course, mention the new trust. My role now was to maintain the facade of innocent concern, to be the slightly baffled mother, trusting her son and her lawyer to sort out the nasty business of paperwork. Any sign of my knowledge, my satisfaction, would alert him. The success of the next phase depended on their growing panic leading them to make a mistake, to reveal their hand completely. I stood up and went to the kitchen. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The gas flame bloomed blue and steady. I took down a mug and a tea bag. The ordinary actions were a grounding ritual. As the water heated, I considered what came next. Daniel would call Henderson. Henderson would stonewall, legally and politely. Daniel and Chloe would confer. Their confusion would curdle into suspicion, then into anger. They would likely come to me, not as schemers this time, but as frustrated children denied a promised toy. They would demand explanations. They would try to bully or wheedle the error corrected. The kettle whistled. I poured the hot water over the tea bag, watching the brown swirl diffuse. I carried the mug back to my armchair. The phone sat silent on the table. I took a sip of tea. It was hot and bitter. I did not mind. The waiting was different now. It was no longer passive. The mechanism was in motion, and I had felt its first vibration through the phone line. The confused anger in my son's voice was not a pleasure. It was a data point. It confirmed the trap was working. The next move was theirs. And I was ready, sitting quietly in my chair, the concerned mother, waiting for her son to call back with the bad news he still did not fully understand. He did not call back. The silence stretched through the remainder of the afternoon and into the evening. I ate a small dinner, washed the dishes, and read a book. The lack of communication was more telling than a call. It meant they were regrouping, that Daniel's call to Henderson had not yielded the quick fix he wanted. It meant anger was simmering. They arrived just after 8 o'clock. The doorbell rang, 2 sharp, insistent presses. I closed my book, marked my page, and went to the door. Through the side light, I saw 2 silhouettes under the porch light. I turned the lock and opened the door. Daniel and Chloe stood on the welcome mat. Their faces were no longer arranged in pleasant masks. Daniel's was set in hard lines of frustration, his jaw tight. Chloe's was pale, her mouth a thin slash of scarlet lipstick. They did not wait for an invitation. "We need to talk. Now," Daniel said, stepping past me into the foyer. Chloe followed, her perfume a strong, sweet cloud in the close space. "Of course," I said, closing the door against the night air. "Is this about the bank mix-up? Did you get it sorted?" Daniel let out a short, harsh laugh. "Mix-up? Mom, stop it, just stop. Henderson told me everything." I walked past them into the living room, turning on a second lamp. I needed the room bright, clinical. I took my usual chair. "Told you what? Please, sit down, you're upset." "Upset?" Chloe's voice was shrill. "We lost the condo. Our earnest money is gone. The sellers wouldn't wait. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked at her, then at Daniel. "I have no idea what you're talking about. What did Benjamin say?" Daniel remained standing, looming over my chair. "He said you executed a revocation of the power of attorney. He said it was your legal right. He wouldn't say why. He wouldn't do a thing about it." He leaned forward, his hands gripping the back of the sofa. "Why would you do that? We had an understanding. We had a plan." "A plan?" I kept my voice level, curious. "The plan was for you to help manage things if I became ill. That was the understanding. Was there another plan?" The question hung in the air. They exchanged a glance. The masks were fully off now. There was no need for their careful performance. Only the raw objective remained. "The plan," Daniel said, each word deliberate, "was to streamline the family assets, to secure everyone's future, my future, your grandchildren's future when we have them. That power of attorney was the first step. Now you've sabotaged it." By revoking a legal document I have a right to revoke, I asked. How is that sabotage? If you needed to act on my behalf, you could have called me. I'm perfectly capable of signing my own checks, Daniel. He pushed off the sofa and began to pace. You don't get it. This isn't about signing checks. This is about efficient management. This is about being able to make decisions without this. He gestured at me, at the room. Without my input, I finished for him. Yes, God, yes. You're stuck in the past, Mom. You're sitting in this museum of a house, counting pennies, while Chloe and I are trying to build a real life, a modern life. The money just sits here, doing nothing. I looked at Chloe. Her arms were crossed, her eyes glittering with a furious entitlement. We were going to buy the corner unit, she said, as if stating a self-evident truth. We were going to invest in a rental property. We had it all mapped out, and you just pulled the rug out. With the money from the sale of this house, I said, not as a question. Daniel stopped packing. Of course, with the money from this house and the investments, it's not like you're using it. You live on your pension. It's wasted here. It should be working for the family. For your family, I clarified. I am your family, he shouted, the sound explosive in the quiet room. Your only family, who else is it for? That garden, your dead plants. The air went cold. I did not flinch. I let the echo of his words fade. Then I spoke, my voice lower, devoid of any pretense of confusion. So the plan all along was for you to gain control of my assets, sell my home, and use the proceeds to fund your upgraded lifestyle. Is that correct? He blinked, thrown by the directness. The legal phrasing of the question seemed to corner him. It's an investment strategy for the whole family legacy. It is not a strategy, I said. It is a liquidation of my life. You discussed it in the hallway at Henderson's office. Just keep her happy until after she signs everything. I heard you, Daniel. His face went slack. The color drained from it. Chloe made a small, choked sound. You heard, he whispered. Every word, and your wife's giggle. I looked at Chloe. She took a step back as if physically pushed. For a moment, there was only the sound of the clock ticking on the mantel. The shock on his face was being rapidly replaced by a defensive, calculating fury. So what? So you heard a private conversation. We were stressed. It was just talk. The documents were still for your own good. They were for your own good, I said. And you are no longer my agent. You are no longer the successor to my trust. Any questions you have about the current status of my affairs should be directed to Mr. Henderson. He has all the relevant documents. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? No longer the successor. The trust amendment we signed named me. That's irrevocable. Is it? I asked. I stood up. The movement made him take a half step back. I was not taller, but in that moment I felt immovable. You should speak with your lawyer. Now I'd like you both to leave. You can't do this, Chloe shrieked, finding her voice. You can't just cut him out. He's your son, after all he's done for you. All he's done for me, I repeated, turning my gaze to her. You have a very interesting ledger, Chloe. Now please leave my home. Daniel's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He was trembling, but not from hurt, from rage, the kind that comes from a thwarted and presumed entitlement. This isn't over. You're confused. You're making a huge mistake. We'll fight this. You are welcome to try, I said, walking to the front door and opening it. The cool night air rushed in. Talk to Benjamin. He will explain it all to you. Good night. They stood frozen for a moment in the center of my living room, marooned in the bright lamplight. Then, with a final, searing look of hatred from Chloe and a dumbfounded glare from Daniel, they stalked out. I closed the door behind them. I engaged the deadbolt with a solid, metallic clunk. I did not watch them drive away. I returned to my chair. My heart was beating steadily, a strong, rhythmic percussion in my chest. The confrontation was over. They had revealed their true objective in plain terms. There were no more illusions on either side. The next step was theirs. They would go to Henderson. And there, in that office where this began, they would receive the full legal explanation. The revelation of the clause. My work was done. All that remained was to witness the consequences. I picked up my book again, but I did not open it. I simply sat in the quiet house, the echo of their demands still hanging in the air, and waited for the final piece to fall. The summons came from Benjamin Henderson's office the next morning. Marion's voice was professionally neutral. Mr. Henderson has asked if you could come in at 11. Daniel and Chloe Rousseau are scheduled to be here at 11:15. He feels it would be appropriate for you to be present. I'll be there, I said. I arrived at 10 minutes to 11. Henderson met me in the reception area and guided me not to the conference room, but to his private office, the same space where we had formulated the plan. He closed the door. They are upset, as you can imagine, he said, settling behind his desk. They demanded an explanation for the revocation and clarification on the trust. I informed them I could only discuss details with you present as my client. They agreed to the meeting. What will you tell them? The truth, the legal truth. I will explain the documents you have executed. I will show them the relevant clauses. My duty is to you, but they have a right to understand the current legal standing, as it directly countermands their expectations. He steepled his fingers. It will not be pleasant, Evelyn. I do not expect it to be, I said. At 11:15 precisely, Marion escorted them in. Daniel entered first, his face a closed fist of anger. Chloe followed, her expression haughty, but her eyes were darting, nervous. They stopped short when they saw me seated in one of the client chairs. What is she doing here? Daniel demanded. Your mother is my client, Henderson said, his voice cool. These matters concern her estate planning. It is proper for her to be present. Please sit. They took the two remaining chairs, Daniel choosing the one farthest from me. The air in the room was thick and still. Henderson opened a file on his desk. You asked for an explanation. I will provide one. Last week, Evelyn executed two primary documents. The first was a revocation of the durable power of attorney she had previously granted to you, Daniel. That revocation is now a matter of public record. It is effective immediately. You no longer have any legal authority to act on her behalf. Daniel's jaw worked. We know that. What about the trust? The amendment we signed, that's still valid. It was valid, Henderson corrected. It was superseded. Evelyn executed a subsequent amendment to her revocable living trust. This new amendment revokes the prior one that named you as successor trustee and primary beneficiary. Chloe made a sharp, indignant sound. She can't do that. We signed that together. She can, and she did. A revocable trust is, by definition, revocable and amendable by the grantor, Evelyn, at any time. Her signature alone is sufficient. Yours was never required for any amendment, only for the original creation, which was years ago. Daniel leaned forward, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. So what does the new one say? Who's the beneficiary now? Some charity? Is that it? You're giving my inheritance to strangers. Henderson's expression did not change. He turned a page in the file. The new amendment does not name an individual beneficiary. It directs that upon Evelyn's death, the assets of the trust shall be used to fund a separate, irrevocable instrument. He lifted two bound documents. This is the declaration of the Arthur Rousseau Memorial Community Garden Fund. It is an irrevocable philanthropic trust. Evelyn is the lifetime income beneficiary. Upon her passing, the entire principal transfers permanently to this fund. The fund's trustees are the board of the Community Garden Foundation. The terms are fixed. It cannot be amended, broken, or redirected. Not by Evelyn, not by you, not by anyone. The silence that followed was absolute. It was as if all the air had been sucked from the room. Daniel stared at Henderson, then at me, his mind visibly struggling to process the finality of the words asterisk, irrevocable, and permanently asterisk. Chloe was the first to break. A garden, she whispered, the word dripping with incredulous disgust. You're giving everything to a asterisk garden. To a fund that will maintain it in perpetuity, yes, Henderson said. Daniel found his voice. It was cracked low. This is a mistake. You were confused. We can challenge this. We can prove undue influence. He turned to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of betrayal and fury. You tricked us. You sat there and signed the first papers knowing you'd do this." I met his gaze. "I signed your papers after I heard you in the hallway planning to keep me happy until you had control. I signed my papers with full knowledge and clear intent. There was no confusion, no undue influence, only a response to a presented set of facts." "You've stolen from me," he shouted, surging to his feet. "That was my money, my future." "It was never your money, Daniel," I said, my voice flat. "It was mine and Arthur. Earned by us, saved by us. It was never an entitlement. It was a potential gift revoked by your actions." Henderson stood, a subtle assertion of authority. "The documents are legally flawless, Daniel. They have been filed and recorded. Any challenge would be lengthy, expensive, and almost certainly unsuccessful. You would be litigating against an irrevocable charitable trust, a highly favored entity in the eyes of the law. I would not advise it." Chloe stood up, her face ashen. She looked at Daniel, then at the documents on Henderson's desk as if they were poisonous. "So that's it. We get nothing. After all our planning, after everything." "You get what you already received," I said. "The loans that were never repaid, the down payment assistance. You have your condo, your incomes, your lives. That is what you get." Daniel was still standing, trembling, looking from Henderson to me and back again. The reality was sinking in, layer by brutal layer. The house, the investments, the comfortable future he had budgeted, all of it was gone, transformed into fertilizer for a community garden. The elegant, legal finality of it was the most devastating blow. There was no villain to scream at, just a piece of paper with a clause he had never considered. He finally looked at me, and for a second I saw the little boy, bewildered and caught. Then it was gone, replaced by the hardened stranger. "You've chosen a patch of dirt over your own son." "No," I said quietly. "You made that choice when you chose to see me as a resource to be managed. I have simply chosen to conserve the legacy for something that grows, rather than for something that only consumes." He had no answer. He turned and walked out of the office, the door swinging shut behind him with a soft click. Chloe lingered for a moment, her mouth opening and closing silently, before she hurried after him. Henderson and I stood in the quiet room. He slowly closed the file. "It is done," he said. I nodded. The mechanism had completed its cycle. The signature had been switched. The legacy had been redirected. There was no triumph in the moment, only a vast, hollow quiet and the certainty that the garden would bloom, season after season, long after all of us were gone. I did not go straight home from Henderson's office. I drove without a specific destination, moving through the city's midday traffic. The confrontation was over. The legal explanation had been delivered. The silence in the car was not empty. It was filled with the echo of Daniel's final, stunned expression. I felt no victory. I felt a profound and weary finality. I eventually turned toward Elm Street. The garden was the only place that made sense. The gate was unlocked. I walked in, the gravel crunching under my shoes. It was a weekday, so only a few people were tending their plots. The sun was high, warming the air. I went to my plot and simply stood there, looking at the neat rows of beans and carrots. The physical reality of the soil, the plants, the bamboo stakes was an anchor. Martin saw me and walked over, his movements slow and deliberate. "Evelyn, everything all right? You look a bit peaked." "I'm fine, Martin. Just a long morning." He nodded, not prying. "Well, you'll never guess. Got a call from a lawyer today, a Mr. Henderson. Said something about a fund being set up, in Arthur's name, for the garden." I bent down to pick a stray weed from the edge of my plot. "Yes, I know about that." He was quiet for a long moment. That's a remarkable thing, Evelyn." "It's what he would have wanted," I said, which was true. Arthur believed in community, in leaving things better than you found them. The lawyer mentioned an irrigation system and a part-time coordinator. Martin's voice held a note of awe. "It'll change everything, for the long term." "That's the idea," I said. I stood up, brushing my hands on my trousers. "A permanent thing." He understood the weight of the word. "Thank you," he said, simply. Then he turned and went back to his compost, giving me the solitude I needed. I spent an hour there doing small tasks, watering, tying a bean vine to a stake. The work was familiar and mindless. With each motion, the tight coil of tension that had lived in my chest for weeks began, incrementally, to loosen. In the days that followed, a new routine established itself. It was much like the old one, but quieter. The phone did not ring with calls from Daniel or Chloe. I received no more invitations to lunch or celebrations. The silence from their direction was absolute. I did not reach out. The bridge was not burned. It had been dismantled, piece by legal piece, and I felt no urge to rebuild it. I learned through a mutual acquaintance, who felt compelled to share the news, that they had put their condo on the market. The upgrade was, of course, impossible now. The sale, I heard, would barely cover their mortgage and the real estate fees. They were downsizing. I did not inquire further. My own life contracted into a manageable sphere. I paid my bills. I tended my roses. I visited the garden 3 times a week. I met with Benjamin Henderson once to review the final trust administration details and to sign the papers that officially appointed the Garden Foundation board as trustees. The meeting was brief and professional. One morning, several weeks after the meeting in Henderson's office, I was at the garden early. The new irrigation system, the first project of the fund, was being installed. Workers were laying pipes along the main paths. The sound of their shovels biting into the earth was a steady, productive rhythm. Martin was watching, a clipboard in his hand, directing them with a quiet authority. I brought 2 cups of coffee from the diner down the street. I handed one to him. He took it with a grateful nod. "First phase," he said, gesturing with the clipboard. "Next is fixing the fence. Then we can start planning for the kids' program next spring." "It's happening quickly," I observed. "When the money's there and the will is there, things can move," he said. He sipped his coffee. "You did a good thing, Evelyn. A hard thing, I imagine, but a good one." I didn't answer. I just watched the workers. One of them, a young man, smiled and said something to his partner. They were building something that would last. Their labor had a clear purpose. I finished my coffee and walked to my plot. I had planted a new row of lettuce seedlings a few days before. I knelt to check them. The soil was damp from the new irrigation lines. The seedlings looked strong, their leaves a vibrant green against the dark earth. I sat back on the wooden bench Arthur had built years ago, its slats worn smooth. The morning sun was warm on my face. I closed my eyes and listened. The distant traffic hum, the chatter of sparrows, the sound of water flowing through a new pipe, the murmur of Martin talking to the foreman. This was the legacy now. Not a name on a bank account, but a system of support for a living, breathing space. It would outlast me. It would outlast Daniel and Chloe. It would do tangible good, season after season. The revenge, as people might call it, was complete. It had not been violent or loud. It had been a series of quiet, precise actions, a listened conversation, a researched clause, a new signature. Its consequence was not their ruin, but their removal from a story they had tried to rewrite. They were left with the lives they had built for themselves, without the subsidy of my life's work. I felt a sorrow for the son I had lost, a hollow space that would never truly fill. But I did not feel guilt. I had protected what was mine to protect. I had honored my husband's memory and my own principles. In the end, that was the only ledger that mattered. A breeze rustled the leaves of the bean plants. I opened my eyes. The garden was alive with light and growth. I stood up, collected my empty coffee cup, and nodded to Martin. I walked out through the gate, the metallic click of the latch behind me a sound of closure. I got into my car and drove home to my quiet house, to my own routines, to the rest of my life, which was, once again, authentically my own.